Hello, everybody, and welcome. Before we start, I would like us to take a selfie. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with that? Yeah? Sure. Okay, let's do it then. Perfect. Thank you. So, last year, I was preparing a workshop for AWS reInvent, and I had a very tight deadline where I had to understand and refactor a very complex code, document all the steps out of it, and many, many more. It was really a nightmare, so I turned to generative AI as the last resort, and since then, I haven't gone back. So welcome, everybody, to Accelerating Developer Productivity with Generative AI. Now, in this session, I will take you through the essential tasks of the development lifecycle and how generative AI can help you move faster as a developer. So who in here is a software engineer? Perfect. Who is a QA engineer? Only two, right? Cool. And who is a DevOps engineer? Only one. Two. Perfect. Now, this is me. I'm a solutions architect at AWS. I also specialize in serverless technologies and in Java. My background is not in AI, but in software engineering for more than 15 years. I have also been an AWS trainer, and I like going to public events and speak, such as AWS summits, reInvent that you see over there, DevOps, and others. And my passion is writing, so I used to write in blogs. I now have my own blog that I write, and last year I published my very first book called Mastering Event-Driven Microservices in AWS, which you can find also on Amazon. I like quotes, so I've built my own quote. I'm trying to sound smart here. So AI won't steal your job, but if you do not use it, another human might. The past 2 years, there has been a big boom in generative AI adoption, right? We've seen that generative AI can really boost our productivity. And Mark Zuckerberg said that AI can replace almost all the junior developers that Meta has. I don't really believe that AI will ever replace developers. But I strongly believe that if you do not become more productive in any way, then your job will be at risk by another human. And now, the best way to be more productive is through generative AI. Why should we embrace generative AI? Right? If we see some statistics, and a McKinsey survey that we see here, generative AI could possibly add up to $600 billion to the European economy by 2030. And this is huge. Recently, we saw the company called Stargate Project, which is a $500 billion investment over the next 4 years in the US. And by seeing some stats from AWS reInvent that took place last year in December, from the total 2,500 sessions, 35% of those were based on AI, right? And out of those 35%, 93% of those were generative AI sessions. So there is a big boom in generative AI adoption, and that is why we should really embrace it. Now, over the past 2 to 3 decades, we have witnessed 3 transformative eras in computing technology. The dawn of the millennium marked the internet explosion, where we saw like hundreds and millions of websites being created. In 2006, AWS invented what we now call the cloud. And in 2022, we saw that generative AI revolution with ChatGPT, an era where machines can create content, can generate code, can solve complex problems, can really engage in human-like interactions, giving us possibilities to boost our productivity, some of which we haven't yet explored. Now, how can generative AI help developers boost our productivity? Let's see an example of an ideal development lifecycle task. So, you get a project from your manager that you want to develop a new feature into a code base, right? Ideally, what we want to do is first get the code base, understand the code. This is like one of the hardest parts because the code might be like huge, it might be like a spaghetti code, whatever. As soon as we understand the code, then we need to write the code. And this is the actual task that we have. We need to write the code. We need to write the feature. Then we most probably want to write some unit tests, right? So who writes unit testing here? Not many of you, right? The fourth step is to write some documentation, because when we write code, we don't want to write it only for the machines to understand, right? We want to write code so other humans can understand. And finally, we want to optimize the code. We want to make it faster, more efficient, more cost-effective, and so on and so forth. But the reality is somehow different, right? So we get the code, we do not really understand the code because it's super complex to understand. We cannot really read it. We do write the code. This is our task, right? We rarely or never write any unit tests, and you confirm that, right? Then we somehow try to generate documentation and write documentation. And finally, we do optimize the code because when we wrote it initially, it wasn't very efficient. So how can we speed up all those tasks throughout this development life cycle that we saw? How can generative AI help us with that? So we have the AI assistants that we use for software development. And two of the most famous ones are GitHub Copilot and Amazon Q Developer that use generative AI under the hood. Now, I'm not here to sell any of those services. I'm not here to pitch Amazon Q Developer or anything, right? So I'm here to help you, to show you how to use those tools to boost your productivity throughout those tasks that we saw. What we are going to do throughout this presentation is that I've built a demo project, which is just a Java application that connects to a database. We don't know anything else from this application. We want our AI assistants to help us dig into it, understand it, write our code, generate our unit tests, and so on and so forth. So through a series of some videos that I have, we will see how those AI assistants can really help us throughout those tasks that we saw before. Now, Copilot and Q Developer are very easy to use in your favorite IDEs. They both support the most famous ones like Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, IntelliJ, and others. But the majority of developers use Visual Studio Code, so we'll see how this works here. Now, when you install Q Developer or Copilot as a plugin in Visual Studio Code, then you need to authenticate yourself for free. It doesn't cost anything. And then you start using it. So let's see how you use them. We see the Copilot. icon in there. So Copilot and QDeveloper are like ChatGPT, right? So you can talk to them. So if you say, hi, Copilot, it answers, how can I help you? If you do /help, you will see all the available actions there. So we have explain as an action, test, to generate unit test, fix, propose a fix, and so on and so forth. Now this is Copilot. If we go to the QDeveloper icon and we open it, we see the same things. We can talk to it, say, hi, Q. It says, hi, how can I help you today? And then we can do, again here, /help. So we see a list of commands that we do, like /dev, /doc, /review, test, and so on and so forth. So step number 1 from the development life cycle that we saw. We need to get the code and really understand it. On the left-hand side, you see that I have a code there, a project. If you are a Java developer and you see this pom.xml, you understand that this is like a Java project. Now, let's see what this project has. So we open the pom.xml, which is how we build our project. We have Java 1.8, which is a fairly old version. We use Spring Boot framework for that, and we have some other libraries there. Let's open now the classes and see if we can understand anything from here, right? So we see we have many packages there. We have something called unicorn controller, right? We have some methods like create, unicorn, update, get, delete. Okay, so somehow it does something there with creating and doing some operations on unicorns. But then we go to Copilot and we say, please explain this class, right? And what we get from this is that it gives us like a very good understanding of it. It says that we have a unicorn controller class, which also has a test class, and we have 4 endpoints, right? A post, a put, a get, and a delete endpoint. We open now the test that it mentions here, and we see that we only test 2 methods from those, like the get unicorn and the create unicorn. So we kind of have a good understanding of this class, but let's see how QDeveloper now reacts on the same thing. Apart from using the icons in there, we can also right-click and see that we have some commands there. So we go to Amazon Q, and we do explain. So it sends all this code to the prompt, and we get an answer from Amazon Q Developer. So similar to Copilot, we see that this is a Spring Boot REST controller that has some endpoints, and it has some CRUD operations like create, update, delete from a database, right? But this is not really what we would like to do and understand the whole code base. What we want to do is ask those AI assistants to explain like the whole project, not only some files and some classes. Now, there is no native command or functionality that you can do that from those 2 AI assistants. But what you can really do is go to one of those, like open Amazon Q Developer, and ask if you drew an architecture for this project, what would it be, right? Now, QDeveloper has access to our code, so it can really search the whole code and give us an architecture of that and explain what the whole thing is, right? So you see we get an answer from there. What I've done, I've copy-pasted the answer. So as you can see, QDeveloper told us that we have some layers in our project, like the presentation layer where we have a unicorn controller class, where we have our endpoints. Then we have the service layer where we have the unicorn service Java class, where we do some business logic and validations. And finally, we have the repository layer where we do all the data access operations, like saving something to the database or getting from the database, and so on and so forth, right? Now, and what Q tells us is that this architecture has some key principles, like it has like a separation of concern, so we have different layers, we use the RESTful design, and as we see from here, this architecture provides several benefits like maintainability, testability, scalability, clear separation of responsibilities, and also easy to extend and modify, right? So in just 5 minutes, we get a very good understanding of the whole project. It's not really like that when you have a huge code base, because this is a fairly simple code, but you can do the same even with a huge code base, and you can get a better understanding than going yourself and just reading all the classes and the whole project, right? Perfect. So we have now a good understanding of the code. So step number 2 is we need to write the code. We need to write the feature that our manager gave to us. A very nice functionality that QDeveloper has is we can do /dev and write whatever we want. So what we have here is we're saying that we want to implement logging for critical REST endpoints because there's no logging in there, and we want to also create some stack traces to facilitate debugging and troubleshooting. What Q will do is go to the classes that we have there, try to review them, and we see how many it reviewed, like 4 classes, and it will also try to create new files, but also update the existing ones. And there we can see some things that IQ did. So inside the unicorn controller, it added a logger, and for each method, it added some logs. It also added a logback XML, which is what Java uses for logging, and it also added this global exception handler, as you saw, that returns some exceptions if something goes wrong, like internal server errors or bad requests or whatever, right? So when you see those changes, you can approve them, you can reject them, and then Q will add them to the code base automatically. So you don't have to copy-paste code and do it yourself. So this is a very good functionality that Q has. So we've written our code, then let's add some unit tests. Let's see how Copilot generates unit tests. Again, we go to our unicorn controller, where we have all our endpoints. We can right-click, say Copilot, and generate tests. Let's see what it will give us for the delete unicorn test. As you can see, Copilot understood that we already have a Java class for testing our unicorns, so it goes there and adds this test, this unit test, into this class. And as you can see, it also follows like the same that other tests do, right? So it uses Mockito, it uses MVC result, it uses assertions, like similar to others. So it understands what libraries we've been using, what other tests we have inside the class. and it uses the same functionality there. Right. What I've seen from QDeveloper and Copilot is that sometimes it might generate more than one unit tests. So for different input parameters, for different edge cases, like if we have an error or whatever. And this is very powerful to have more code coverage into your code base. Right, step number 4. Let's generate some documentation for our code base. Right? How can we do that? Again, fairly simple. We right-click on our Unicorn controller. We say Copilot generate documentation, and it goes there and it follows the language-specific documentation. Like here, you see that it follows like the Java docs. Right? So you can generate documentation either at the class level or at the method level, like you see here for the create unicorn. And the only thing that you do is like accept what Copilot gives you, and that's all. That is very easy to do so as well. Last step for our development lifecycle is we want to optimize the code. Right? Let's see how Q will optimize our code. Now, we right-click to our Unicorn controller, we click on Optimize, and we see a list of optimizations there. So if you go to the first one, yeah, we see there are some redundant auto-wired annotations, that's okay. We see that we can add some input validation and error handling that we don't have. So whenever we send something to the post endpoint and the unicorn is null, we now return a bad request that we didn't do before. And we also send an internal server error whenever something goes wrong. And as soon as the unicorn is created, we also send a created status code, a 201, right? So we added error handling, we added input validation, we added proper HTTP status codes, and we can see other things there, like you can add request caching to your get endpoint. That's what QDeveloper says, because this will improve also the performance of your get request, right? So what it did, it also added a cacheable annotation there, but we cannot really compile that because we are missing the library. And it also changed, again, the method to add also correct HTTP status codes. So these are like good optimizations we can do for our code base, and they are fairly easy to do so also by those AI assistants. Perfect. So we've finished like all the tasks from our development life cycle. So AI assistants really helped us. And let's see now what the future looks like from those AI assistants. First of all, the LLMs that they use behind the scenes will get much better. We'll see a better efficiency, better performance, right? That's for sure. Another thing that I expect for those assistants to have in the future is they will increase the integration with development workflows like code repositories, CI/CD pipelines, and so on and so forth. I expect that they will be much better in specialized domain expertise, like for specific programming languages or frameworks. Already, we see that Amazon QDeveloper has a functionality to transform a Java 8 version to Java 21, for example. And now there's also the functionality to upgrade an old .NET Java project to the latest .NET. So we'll see this adoption happening more and more often from those AI assistants. I expect from those to have a more collaborative capabilities, so we won't really need a human to do pair programming, but we'll do it with those AI assistants. And last but not least, I expect to have a more advanced debugging functionality, because at the moment there isn't something like that available. Now, what are the key takeaways from this session, right? So, I urge you to start using those AI assistants throughout your development tasks, right? Start now, because those AI assistants are for free, come for free, right? They do not really need any managerial approval, because you just install a plugin into your IDE and you start using them, right? You authenticate for free, and that's all. I hope you don't need any managerial approval. As a final remark, I want to say that juniors going all in with AI and skip fundamentals, they might ignore skills like clean design and problem solving. And AI will turn them into ninja coders who copy-paste code without understanding its correctness. By using AI, you outsource your thinking, which is the most critical skill you have as a developer. I suggest that you master the fundamentals first, and then you use AI to go faster, but not as a replacement for your thinking. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Lefteris. Thanks a lot. Normally we don't have time for questions, but you're 3 minutes earlier, so if there is one question, there are many. Yeah, right. Let's go there, because on the back. Yep.
Thank you, very enlightened. It was very good presentation. Yesterday, they told us that we should not use ChatGPT and give organization data, project data, and online, because then it's going to keep them there. It's going to share them around. These assistants share the projects that we use them. Is it offline? Is it? Are we going to have any problem with the privacy?
Yeah, this is like a huge conversation.
Because we
so
have limitations. We have limitations from the organization.
Yes. So data privacy, right? So when you do any functionality with those AI assistants, those data are sent like through the internet, somewhere in the back end, right? They are sent with encryption, though, with TLS encryption, and they are not used by anyone else. It's only for you to use, right? So they are also sent and encrypted at rest, what we say, right, in their backend, and then they are sent back to the AI assistants, and they are kept there for some days. I'm not sure how many, right? So if you have some data privacy issues from your company, and you surely have, right, you might not be able to use them like they are, right? And maybe use some kind of other tools, like, for example, Amazon Bedrock, if you know it. If you use AWS as your cloud provider, and you have Amazon Bedrock, which has some generative AI LLMs behind the scenes, like Claude, for example, and you want to use it within your controlled environment, right? You can use it, and data will never go out of your boundary, let's say, of your cloud services. Right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks, Lefteris.
Thank you, everyone.